Okay, picture now we have Brandon, Sarah, Abba, and Baylie.
Alright, well, this is our pitch for our opening sequence. What we would want to happen in the sequence is we have a teenage boy who goes to a library to just sit down on his own because he doesn't have friends or any social groups with him, so he goes there to the library, and then he's only there to not do work but just to draw. There's a reason behind that, and we'll explain that in the narrative. What happens is when he starts drawing, he kind of enters into a dream state where his drawings become envisioned in the real world, and he enters into a different plane of existence. This is kind of showing us, the audience, what he envisions the world to be like and what he expects to be in a social position, because in the dream state he's kind of the popular kid, and then he's the person who gets his dream girl. But then somewhere during that dream state we get a hard cut back to the reality that he's in, and then he kind of snaps back into reality, and then he kind of leaves the library to then go back to the dull existence that he's in.
We've taken inspiration from a variety of different films that follow a unique narrative. We took visual inspiration from Diary of the Wimpy Kid, as it switches from his real world to his drawn imagination. The narrative is also quite similar to our film, as it follows one boy who documents his life in the form of a diary.
We was also inspired by the film Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, as it follows a very cartoonish style, which we want to follow in our sequence.
Our visual style is quite important in our film because our narrative consists of two different worlds. So what this means is that the two settings are going to have different visual styles to differentiate the two worlds. So for example, the fantasy world is going to have quite high key lighting, bright colours and a cartoonish filter. However, the real world is going to be kind of grayscale, bland and dark colours to kind of reflect how our main character views the real world. Also, our use of editing is also quite important because the transition between the fantasy world to the real world is also quite important because the transition should be as smooth as possible. So we thought maybe we could get a shot of what the main character is drawn, and they'll just have a smooth transition into reality.
So our main character will have the characteristics of a stereotypical nerd and will resemble Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, as he's quite antisocial and awkward.
We also decided to include groups of characters that would reflect real life teenage groups.
The overall narrative to the sequence is that this kid is stuck in a plane of social awkwardness where he gets bullied on a daily basis, and he doesn't have a very nice social presence at home, so he kind of feels a bit neglected, which kind of is represented by the whole grayscale theme that we're going for with the real world. Then something kind of happens to this teenager where he kind of gets into an accident. We're not too sure what the accident will be, but it's kind of what we want to expect is him to go into a comatose state, so that then he gets trapped in his dream world, and then it's just him for the whole for the rest of the film. It's him trying to go through this dream world. He accepts it at the beginning, he likes it, but then manifestations of the real world become apparent, and he has to stop them. And the whole the meaning behind all of this is just it's just his way of trying to acknowledge and trying to stop bullying from happening to him. And it's just trying him to sort of become someone of trying to become someone he envisions to be. He tries to become the better person, not the better person, but someone who he envisions himself to be in a social presence.
So the music will be score based, but in the library it will be slow paced and have a low volume whereas in the dream world it will be fast-paced with a high volume. We will also use diegetic sounds, such as background noise in the library.
For props for the main character, we'll give him like sort of like typical like teenager like stuff that you'd expect in like from a school environment. So you'd give him like a stationery and writing tools, and you'd give him like a bag to keep it in. We're not really too sure as to what props we may need for the fantasy style to this film, because we're not too sure how to represent the actual world. But we do know that when we come across it, we'd have to kind of like create some props, just so like it's more like an imaginative idea instead of like a clean cut actual product.
For the lighting, so for certain settings such as the park, we'll kind of use just natural lighting, but for other areas in the real world, like the library and the school, we'll use low-key lighting, and as I said before, in the fantasy world, we'll use high-key lighting.
For our opening sequence, we're going to consist of multiple settings like school, library and the park. We decided to do, have these settings because they're convenient and are common places where teenagers are seen. And our sequence is going to start and end at the library. We decided to make this our main setting because it's a perfect ground for our character as his imagination takes off.
So here's a short clip of what we wanted our title slash credits to look like. Yeah,
Click
so
on the.
Yeah, so we thought that was really good because it kind of is based around drawing and art, and it fits into our narrative as well. And we're going to use Photoshop. I mean, not Photoshop, After Effects. So they have After Effects.
Who's got After Effects? You have.
So these are like kind of what me and Brandon kind of envisioned for the sequence. Like that's his midboard on the right, and that's mine on the left. Something that we didn't talk about with the character choices is that we want to try and use two different protagonists. We want to use like a younger kid for the main world and a slightly older kid for the fantasy world, because it kind of shows what he wants to be in the future. Also because it shows that he's like a more mature person in the fantasy world. Anything else coming on your board?
No. My mood board just kind of shows what his personality is kind of going to be like. So it's kind of depressed, and he kind of feels isolated most of the time. And he tries his best to kind of separate himself from the real world.
And that's about it.
I've got quite a few questions. First of all, I think that it's a really great idea and it's potentially brilliant, but it is also very ambitious. So although it's got the potential to be top grade, it's also got the potential to fall flat on its face. So I think your planning is going to be really, really, really crucial for this. CJ, quick question.
What's After Effects?
It's a program.
You know how you have a setting for like the library and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Where's the setting for the fantasy?
We did kind of choose like a park setting because it's more of like an open, vibrant area, but we probably would use like some green screen effects just to show any like through like transitions or like any elements that we can't really use. Like again with After Effects we can use like visual effects like animations, and then we can kind of animate like a setting change from the library to like the park area.
I mean, potentially the only way that it's going to work is if you use the same location for both worlds, and you just change the visual style when you do that transition. So, for example, they'd be in the library with this washed out look, and then when it's in the fantasy world, it'd be the same location, but in this kind of like this golden shine or something to it. So I think if you start green screen could work, but it could also look a bit budget. Depends how good your experiment. Depends how good your After Effects skills are. Stephen, I'm going to ask a couple of questions quickly. In terms of your main character, you've gone with a Sheldon type character. The problem with Sheldon is that he's very arrogant and he's also very confident. And you're going more for like an introverted.
No, sir, it's just his outfit, not his character.
His general not like social confidence. It's more of an ability to talk with like people outside of like his.
Fine. So
community.
just socially awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you are. It's going to be like a kind of bit about like an outsider type character. Okay, and you said also about the. You said that you were going to have these hard cuts between the different moments. Is that right? That you wanted it to be quite stark between the. Was that right? You said
yeah. I said that. So like going from fantasy back to reality.
Yeah, but
I just said hard cut because it was just him snapping back into reality. I
think that's quite a good way of doing it. But then you said you were going to do it quite smooth in terms
I meant
of
smooth from his drawings into the fantasy.
I see what you're saying. But when he comes back, it will be quite stark. Yeah, and I think that what you could do, you could use graphic matches there, which is when you have like a shape or something in one thing, and you cut someone else, and the same shape is replicated in that new shot. So if he was like writing, for example, with a pen, then when you cut back, there might be something which had a similar. I'll show you some examples, but I think it'd be quite a good way of doing it. We've run out of time there, but really, really, really good. Well done.